had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire an energy vampire. But also, they're a literal vampire. And suddenly, my team is spending all their time sharpening wooden stakes and buying bulk silver and rehearsing ancient chants, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant takes insights from over 1 billion professionals to create a short list of the best fits for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Hello and welcome to Best Laid Plans. This is your host, Sarah Hart-Unger, and this is a podcast where we talk all things planning and planning adjacent. Today, we're going to talk about a trending topic. I know, who knew that some of the things that we talk about on this show would end up becoming a TikTok trend? But here we are, because analog is definitely trending right now, and I'm here for it. And we're going to talk about several aspects of analog life, including ways that I enjoy being analog and ways you might consider bringing some more analog into your life, as well as some listener suggestions, listener questions, and a listener article that was sent in on just this topic. So I think this will be a really fun discussion, even though you're probably not listening to it entirely in analog form. I'm very excited to bring it to you. All right. So just a little background. You guys know I've done episodes before on reducing screen time and how I feel about my phone use, some very raw, maybe confessional almost episodes about this. And I definitely tend to be on the more skeptical side when it comes to embracing different forms of technology, whether that was the iPhone in like 2010, 2011, or AI today. And that's not to say I don't use some of these forms of technology. Even I have put various prompts into ChatGPT every once in a while. Not many things, honestly. I think I went into my account and I had asked it like 12 things ever. So, I mean, I'm not a frequent user, but at the same time, I'm not someone who completely avoids new forms of technology. But I am always skeptical because often these things bring us some benefits, but they come with downsides as well. And I think it can be so easy to focus on the new and the shiny and forget about what we might be losing when we are transitioning to newer ways of doing things. And going back to the iPhone, I was really, I don't know, with trepidation did I purchase an iPhone in 2011. I was not excited. I kind of knew I had to do it. Like everyone was starting to do it and it was becoming expected to maybe answer texts in an easy way or be able to send photos. But at the same time, I looked ahead thinking, I know this is going to take away maybe as much as it gives. And I feel like in some ways that's been true. Now, there are so many things I find helpful about technology. So I'm not someone who has traded in my iPhone for a light phone or a flip phone. But at the same time, I do feel like there have been so many moments when I just wanted to spend less of my time staring at screens. And I have really intentionally carved out, clawed back. So the analog life whenever it makes sense to do so. Now, if it really makes sense to do something in a digital or automated format, I don't fight it. For example, our holiday card list is in a Google Sheet. I used to have it on paper, but people's addresses changed and it just became so much easier to keep this in digital form. Or for music, I use Apple Music. My son actually has a record player and I think that's super cool. But practically speaking, I love being able to just listen to whatever I want, whenever I want. And a service like Apple Music or Spotify offers that, whereas non-digital forms really don't. And again, there are trade-offs to that. I think I've even talked about that. Like you're not going to get to know albums the way you got to know them in the 90s or so when you only played them like dozens of times, hundreds of times. And now we have so much variety and it's easy to skip from song to song. So we just don't get to know some of our music as intimately as we did back then. But still, for me right now, the trade-off is worth it. But again, that's approaching the issue with intentionality rather than just going with, the default is the newer, has to be better. I definitely don't handwrite the scripts to these episodes. I use Apple Notes, but I also do not use AI in the creation of these scripts either. And I am starting to notice when I'm listening to certain forms of content when I suspect the host has maybe taken a shortcut and plugged a topic in ChatGPT and is reading it. And I don't know. I mean, I have no proof of this, but to me, it is such a turnoff. And I think it's because there's like a little bit of humanness removed when, I mean, obviously, when someone has inserted a computer algorithm into their content creation. So I didn't use any AI in creating my book. I don't use it in writing my blog posts, and I don't use it to create the transcripts of this episode. Every once in a while, full confession, I will use it to help me with the title of an episode. And I did that a couple weeks ago, and then I got creeped out because it said something like, oh, that's very best laid plans. And I was like, oh, wow. I guess from a couple of searches I had done, it knew that I was best laid plans. And that did not make me want to use it again. Anyway, I use plenty of tech. I acknowledge that. But this episode is about all things analog. And you guys shared some amazing hacks and links that we're going to get to. But I guess first, I will just share a few things that I really enjoy doing analog because they are things where maybe there's a small trade-off from the tech equivalent, or maybe I just feel like the benefits outweigh the negatives. And my list of examples goes as follows. Number 1, I use a paper planner. You guys know this. I love my Hobonichi. I love writing in it. And I love creating my own spreads and the tactile feeling of writing on a page. I don't even mind the smudges sometimes. I am fine with crossing things out and writing something else in. You have to be if you're using analog tools, I think. But I get a lot of pleasure out of using an analog planner. And I do keep my source of truth, like my main calendar, in analog form, which again, a lot of people sort of say is not possible, but I am still doing it. So I know it is possible to some extent. And I love it. So that's number 1. Number 2, I read paper books, and often from the library. Sometimes I purchase them, but I find it just so much less distracting to read a book on paper. I feel like I can get more immersed on it than I can get in a screen, and I know I won't be tempted to scroll to something else. Now, I know book-specific devices can provide almost this experience. Like if you have a Kindle Paperwhite, it's not easy to then scroll to some social media app or something like that. But I love paper books, and I don't find the cost of like having to get them or use them to be really problematic in return for the experience of holding something in my hand and turning pages and having a totally, I don't know, electronic-free experience. Well, the light shining above to light up the page is electronic. I'm not reading by candlelight, but you know what I mean. Number 3, I have started getting a paper newspaper on Sundays. So we get the New York Times, and I actually don't often read like the core news because I get a lot of my news through NPR's Up First, which is a daily podcast. But I love reading the editorials and the book review and the art section and the style and just finding fun things in there. And it's just a really peaceful way to start my morning on Sundays. This wouldn't have worked when my kids were a lot younger because I think there just would have been too much chaos. But now it can be a really nice way that I just enjoy leaning into finding out what's going on in the world in a very slow and contained fashion. So I am enjoying my analog Sunday paper. Number 4, I've been leaning into analog hobbies like playing the piano and journaling and maybe even baking a little bit. Eventually, I'll be able to say cross stitch. I haven't started doing any of that yet, but I do really like the piano and I find it more relaxing than I thought I would. And yeah, it just kind of takes you into that flow state because it's one of those activities where you can kind of tailor the difficulty to fit where you are. And I feel very much like I'm only doing one thing when I'm playing piano because you also absolutely cannot multitask. I like hearing the sounds of the piano. I like feeling the fingers on my keys. I think one of the things that makes doing things in analog form feel human and nice is that you have all 5 senses often being stimulated versus just vision and maybe some audio if you're using a screen. But yeah, my analog hobbies, including music. I have been using the phone more. I really like to call people and talk on the phone while I'm taking a walk. Now, even better and more analog would be meeting up with a person and taking a walk together and just having a nice conversation. But it can be hard to get your friends with you in the right place at the right time. So kind of a happy medium for me there is just using the phone, no camera, no selfie stick, and just having a conversation while being outside and getting some movement. And I have been kind of defaulting to yes whenever I get some kind of invitation to an in-person experience, whether that is a trip with friends, a dinner out, book club, because all of those activities are analog and being with other people and having actual in-person social connections is such a gift, one that I appreciate more post-pandemic, I think. But yeah, when you're doing those things again, you're not multitasking, you're not doing something else. Your attention is just on the people with you, and you can enjoy the moment in many of your senses. And then finally, you guys know I abandoned social media long ago because I feel like it's one of the most digital of digital medias. I don't know, that sounds crazy, but it feels more processed to me than, say, listening to a podcast or reading somebody's personal blog. It's curated, often by a robot. It's very fast form. I think more and more of the content is actually generated by robots or generated by AI. And I'm just so happy, like, really not to be a part of that world pretty much at all. So yeah, that's, I guess, a final way in which I'm a little bit against the current and kind of defaulting to analog. And I feel like more than ever, this tendency or this trend is actually like sweeping the cultural zeitgeist a little bit. And I'm excited about it. I'm not one of those people who's like, when something's popular, it's not cool anymore. I mean, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled for more people to maybe be figuring out that they are looking to experience more tactile things or wanting to turn their heads away from screens a little bit. So we're going to take a break. And then I'm going to go into some listener-submitted questions on this topic, as well as a really fun article that a listener sent me. So we'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you with support from IXL, an award-winning online learning platform that fits perfectly into homeschooling or enriching your child's school curriculum. IXL offers interactive practice across math, language arts, science, and social studies, and it can be used at every level from pre-K to 12th grade. As you're solidifying your New Year routines, now is the perfect time to give it a try, maybe as a daily warm-up or enrichment session. I love the simplicity that IXL offers and the way it adapts to fit the needs of each individual learner. My kids have used IXL for years, and I really trust it to help solidify concepts and meet them where they are. There are awards and challenges to keep kids motivated, too. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Best Laid Plans listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/plans. Visit IXL.com/plans to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. All right, I'm back, and we're talking about all things analog today. And this episode in part was inspired by an article that a listener named Charlotte sent me that was published in the Chicago Sun-Times. And I'm going to read a few lines of this article. The author of the article was Mariah Rush, and it was published, I think, via WBEZ Chicago, which is like a radio station, but they have a website. Anyway, here we go. This article says, looking for a pen? Shoppers overwhelm Chicago stationery shops as social media touts return to analog. Stores like Paper and Pencil, which I believe I did actually profile on this show at one point, packed with stickers, fountain pens, and planners, have seen sales surge, but it's not because consumers are looking to get organized in the new year. A line of shoppers are often seen outside the Andersonville stationery shop Paper and Pencil. At the front of the line, a store employee acts as a bouncer, preventing overcrowding in the 400 square foot shop. Then they talk about how stationery stores like Paper and Pencil have seen sales surge. And they credit social media and influencers who have marked this year, 2026, as a return to analog, opting for physical media, entertainment, and yes, pens and paper. Atlas Stationer's co-owner Brandon Schmidt said the pandemic led to new hobbies for some people. And that store was founded in 1939, and they have a big store that is now being swarmed with more people than ever. And the quote from Brendan Schmidt was, people really want to experience something tangible in a world that's dominated by digital technology. Sitting down and writing your thoughts out feels like a lost art that's making a big resurgence. And finally, they note that the Chicago Stationery Fest sold out in 45 minutes. So wow, planners are on the pulse. Planners are trending. Paper is cool again. I love this. The only thing I don't love about it is the fact that now I'm worried that if I want to go to a stationery fest, which I kind of do, that I won't be able to get a ticket. But hopefully I'm the kind of person who can plan ahead for the release, so I will eventually be able to make something like that happen. But wow, such an interesting and cool phenomenon to find out about. And I'm really happy for these stationery stores. I just hope this is not just like a passing trend. But I kind of think that people who do lean into analog may find that they really enjoy it and will stay there a while. So now we have a related listener question. And I promise I didn't make up that I got all these things at once, but when something's trending, all of a sudden you see it in many places at once. So this question comes from listener N, and she writes, I really have an innate desire to be more analog with my planning and do more on pen and paper, but I always struggle to stick with it. It's mostly due to the fact that my work is very computer focused, so my eyes are on digital landscapes, and my master calendar has to be digital because of all the meetings I go to. And also, when I've tried paper planners and notepads, I tend to forget where I wrote things down or don't have said notebook next to me when I need to write something. And so I usually email myself notes, but then that goes back to digital. Should I just accept the fact that digital is how I work better in corporate environments, or is there something else to try? And then finally, she ended with, I like paper because I tend to listen better to people, and I feel there's a better memory retention when I physically write. I also just would like to limit screen time overall, but again, I know it's a big part of my job, and I love my job, so I don't want that to change. Such a great and timely email sent by listener N, so thank you so much for this. I think that what might work for you would be, number one, accepting hybrid. And I think I don't think there's really anyone out there who's like, I only use paper, no email for me, I'm sending letters by mail. We're all hybrid to some extent. And I think in your case, it's fine to accept that you need to have your work calendar be digital, and maybe even it makes sense for your personal planner, kind of calendar management to be digital as well, so those two can interface. But maybe one nice way of blending things would be to have a daily page. And I do feel like I'm seeing this combo more and more. You have your kind of calendar universe electronically. Maybe your task management is electronic as well, but every day you open up a fresh page, either in a blank notebook or a planner that has a formatted page for you. There are so many examples, from Day Designer to Completist to Full Focus to so many others. But you have a daily page where you take notes, write down a list of things you want to do that day, maybe using your electronic system for reference. You can use it to take notes on a meeting. In fact, if you really do like to take meeting notes and remember things that way, then a blank notebook might be the best, because then you can just kind of let the pages flow as they will. Okay, I have a meeting. I can dedicate half the page to taking notes on that. You could just kind of go full bullet journal, but without abandoning the electronic tools that work for you. So I really encourage you to try it. I do think keeping things simple would be great, because you mentioned kind of losing your notebook. So maybe you're like, I only have one notebook. It's this one great dot grid notebook that I love, but that goes with me in my bag, just like my laptop would or my phone. And you can absolutely still email yourself, but then also sometimes use your notebook when it makes sense to capture things. The key is always having a reliable processing ritual. So if you're going to be capturing tasks as they come up in your notebook, that means at the end of the day, you need to put them into whatever task management system you're using, whether that's digital, paper, or otherwise. And you can also email yourself things and put them there as well. Admittedly, I absolutely do both. Today, I even texted myself something because I wanted to make sure I would see it right away. So if I leave a text to myself unread, it'll sit there at the top and I will not miss it. And then it eventually made its way into my planner. It is not either or. We can enjoy using analog tools and still take advantage of some of the benefits that digital has to offer. But I don't think you have to accept that just because you're mostly on digital, that you can't enjoy the benefits of planning on paper. And I guess I'll just give out one more example. My good friend Kay, who I've quoted on this podcast many times, she's been on the podcast as well. She is a digital planner through and through. She loves her Google Sheets and her Google Docs and her Google Tasks and the whole Google universe. But she has started to do a daily page herself. It's like a 2-page spread on graph paper where she writes all sorts of things about what she does for the day. I don't know that she's shared photos of this publicly or anything, but I don't think she'd mind me sharing that she does enjoy doing this kind of analog companion to her digital planning. And I think she finds it centering, just the way I find my daily pages centering as well. So I hope that this really helps you, and you will have to let us know. And then finally, I just have an analog hack to share from a listener in New Zealand. And this person emailed me. Her name is Bronwyn, and she called it Flipper Shock and her solution to Flipper Shock. So she talked about how, when you have a monthly calendar and you turn the page and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that on February 1st, we are flying to another country. I mean, that's a very extreme example, but you get what I'm saying. You can't see what is on the next page, which means that as you get to the end of any time frame, you can kind of be surprised about what's coming up if you don't do regular calendar review. And even me with my lovely essential calendar that has 3 months at a time hanging on my wall, it's still true at the end. I can't see what's happening at the beginning of the next season. So what was her hack? She bought 2 identical calendars that were wire bound and then hung them both up on the fridge. One of them is all even months. One of them is all odd months. So she took out the pages that did not apply. I don't know what she did with those pages. Hopefully she could use them as a cool habit tracker or something like that. But that means she can always have one planner at the top that's the current month and the second planner underneath that is the next month. And that is going to be rolling so that she will never, ever have flipper shock. I absolutely love it. I love how analog it is. I love how simple it is. And then she wrote, I quote, "Sometimes the best solutions are ridiculously simple. I've attached a picture of my calendars. I'm very chuffed with them." So in my American accent, chuffed kind of sounds silly, but I just love that she used that word. So in conclusion, I am not suggesting that anyone go full analog. I mean, you're listening to a podcast and I love podcasts too. And podcasts are not entirely analog, but I do think analog has its advantages. You're so much less distracted. When you're writing things down, you are forced to summarize what you're writing. So there is some very useful processing that goes on as you're taking analog notes. Life just feels more three-dimensional. And honestly, I feel like my powers of focus do grow the more I spend time really focusing on slower moving things like learning a piano piece or reading a paper book that might be a little bit more challenging. Then there's the fact that analog tools are just often more pleasurable to use, like banging on the piano. It feels good. Sometimes it sounds good when I master something. Smelling your muffins as you pull them out of the oven is amazing. It's a multi-sensory experience versus what you're getting on the screen, which is very flat, very two-dimensional, and just not real. And then finally, analog activities, I do think are more likely to connect you with real people. I mean, that's not totally fair. I feel like I've connected with many people indirectly via the blog, but it's not until I've met them in person that I feel like I really know them. Like I think about the people I've met at Best Laid Plans Live, and I, even just in a short time, because I was with them in person, there's a special bond that's like not replaceable by anything virtual, even though there are some wonderful virtual alternatives for when you can't make it happen. All right. So I would love to hear from you on this episode. I kind of think this might be a hotter topic. I don't know. But if you've made an intentional effort to go more analog or you want to, I would love to hear your stories. Maybe we can have analog diaries in a future episode. And let me know if you've ever been to a stationery fest and which one I should try to go to. Because now that I know it's a thing, I know there's pen fests, but I didn't really know there were stationery fests, and I would like to attend one. And then finally, I'd love your take on whether this is going to be a blip on the TikTok trend stream or something with some staying power. All right, well, this has been a super fun episode to talk about and record, and I will be back next week with a very hot topic, a requested topic of airtight task management. Yes, we're doing it. We're going there. I've had partial episodes dedicated to that, but I don't think a full one. So I know that's a challenge for many, many people, and yeah, hopefully I can help. So I'll be back in your feed next Monday. In the meantime, have a wonderful week.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.